greeting of peace, Om Shanti. It's beautiful to see so many of you here, especially when it's a very beautiful summer evening and you could be in the park, you could be outside somewhere in your garden, but you decided to be here. So we're very happy that you've decided to be here. And I'm sure that as soon as you entered the reception, you felt that you were in a very safe place. Is that right? Who felt that? Good. Well, I hope you carry away this feeling with you, because one is a safety created by the atmosphere, but my hope is that you'll actually experience a safe place inside yourself to which you can return at any moment of your choice, because we carry that safe place inside. And yes, why is it that even though on an external level, maybe there's nothing that's wrong, I'm in a safe place, and yet I feel this fear inside, this insecurity within. And when I used to travel abroad and come back to London, I would feel I'm in a safe place. And then suddenly, London changed. I'm talking about the early 70s, and I'd go into far distant corners and I would be fine, but I'd realize the difference in the atmosphere when I'd come back to London. And then one year, in the 70s, I came back and I saw policemen with guns. And I thought, what happened? Something's changed, and not for the better. And so today, where is there a safe place in the world? London isn't safe anymore, that's for sure. Whether it's crazy people driving vehicles onto pavements, or it's people carrying knives, certainly this place is not safe, London. But where is there a safe place? Maybe I'm in a beautiful place on holiday by the ocean, on the sea, and suddenly there's a tsunami, and a tsunami comes without any warning. And so, what happens? How can I feel safe? I want to share a story, and I think from that story you'll be able to see that it's possible to create a safe place for myself just simply with the power of my mind. Here's the story. I heard this when I was in Miami, and there was a program in which people were being asked about experiences of safety or happiness. Many different things were being talked about. And one woman, maybe in her 50s, but very glamorous, she stood up and she said that, I want to share a story. And she said how she'd been on the beach party in Miami, and suddenly it became 2 a.m. and she hadn't realized the time had gone so fast. And she started driving back home alone, and she realized that the petrol gauge wasn't working, and she wondered how long she would be able to carry on. And so she carried on, just hoping. But there came a moment when the car wouldn't function anymore. There was no more petrol. And she paused, she stopped, and she wondered what next. And she wasn't clear about what was going to happen. 2 a.m., alone, Miami. Think about all those ingredients. And she said that she saw these two big guys coming towards her car. And she wondered what she had to do. She still wasn't very clear. And then she let herself go deep inside and become very silent so that it wasn't many thoughts rushing around. And what she did then was to open her car door, step outside, and by then these guys were quite close. And she went towards them and she gave a big smile, and she put her arms out and hugged both of them and said, "God must have sent you for me, thank you." What would the situation have been otherwise? Well, one can only imagine, who knows. But the power of her consciousness and the power of her love was enough to transform what could have been maybe a challenging situation into a situation in which there was love instead of any fear. You've often heard this statement, haven't you? That the opposite of fear isn't just safety, but the opposite of fear is actually love. And so the power of love is enormous, and it can change a situation and make things become very beautiful and safe. I've got a few stories like that, and the challenge for me is, how many stories should I carry on telling you? Maybe one more. And this time it's about Sao Paulo. And again, you know the general stories you hear about Rio, Sao Paulo, all these places. And we just finished a lecture and something like this, and the topic was, I think, also about feeling secure, because people were feeling very threatened and insecure at that time. Probably still now, but certainly at that point. And a lot of people had come, the auditorium was full, and people then left quietly, carrying away. The speciality of our centers in Brazil is that here what you'll do is at the end you'll receive a sweet that's been packed and created with a lot of love. But the Brazilian speciality is that it's not just a sweet that's prepared with love, but they go to an elaborate energy put in for the packaging. And so every packaging is very beautiful. And when I go to Brazil at the end of the year again, I'll bring back a few samples with me, because they really are quite unique and very artistic. And so everybody was given away one of these very beautifully packaged tolis, prasad toli we call it. And that was the end of the program. We came home. Next morning, and some of you know, but maybe you don't, but every morning we come together to have meditation together and a spiritual lesson that we study together. So every center in every country has a morning class, and this is so that you can come before breakfast and have spiritual food for the soul, and then you have the full day clear to do all the work that you need to do. And so, after morning class, a couple of the sisters said, "Can we talk to you?" So they sat and shared a story. They said that they'd come to the program the night before, and they'd brought a friend with them. And they were all back in the car, about to drive home, and somehow the window was open, and so she was trying to get the window to go up, and there was some sort of obstruction, and she didn't know what it was. So she looked around to see what the obstruction was, and it was a gun. This person was young and was holding the gun inside the window. And this person said, "Give me your purse." And she'd come to a spiritual program. There was no fee, no ticket, as usual. And so she didn't carry a purse. And she said she didn't have a purse. And the person's face became quite angry. And then her eyes fell on this package, this toli. And she said to him, "I don't have any money with me, but I've got something very special filled with a lot of love." And she picked up this toli and she gave it to him, and his face broke into a smile. And he took the toli and he left peacefully, without any money. And it was true, she didn't have any money with her. So the power of thoughts, the power of good wishes, the power of good feelings create real physical safety in a situation which otherwise might be very, very unsafe. As I say, I've got several other stories like this from my own personal experience, but enough of the stories. So on the one side, we see what's happening out there, and maybe there's nothing that's happening to me at this moment, but what happens is that there's a memory that's filled with all sorts of experiences. And very often, the positive experiences that we've had of joy and happiness and love, although we enjoy them at that time, these feelings are very transient. And perhaps you're aware that for the last 20, 25 years or so, there's been a whole new subject of inquiry and research, and that's been positive psychology. And when I met a woman who had received the Templeton Prize for Positive Psychology at that time, that year, I asked her, how come we've only heard about positive psychology so recently? And all these years, nobody spoke about it. And she said, for the last 100 years plus, we focused on the negative feelings. And so most psychology, up until fairly recently, dealt with anger issues, jealousy and greed and, all those things. And she said this is because when negative feelings and emotions come, they come like a sledgehammer. Ever felt it? No, nobody's ever felt those. Felt anger at any time? No? Everyone calm and peaceful here. Some are telling us that they have. And so when those feelings come, the negative feelings, they come like a sledgehammer and they bowl you over, and you don't know at that moment what you're saying and what you're doing. That's the reality. But it also means that because they come so strongly, but also they last for a period of time, it's been very easy to study those things. But positive feelings like love and peace are very subtle. They don't come like a sledgehammer. They come very softly, very quietly. And when they come, you enjoy them. But then very often in today's world, they're transient. They go away very quickly. And so it's only been in very recent times that we've been able to develop the tools and the skills to be able to actually measure these positive feelings. So the subject has been always the negative side rather than the positive side. And so what's happened inside of us is that when we experience beautiful feelings, they're subtle. They come, and very often they disappear very quickly. They don't stay for long. And the other thing about the human mind is that when something stays with you for a long time, not only is it that those feelings get imprinted, but also the memory track carries that experience. And so it's imprinted in a very deep way inside yourself. And in fact, in recent times, I've even understood, and there are others who are experts, not me, but what I have understood is that it's not only that feelings and memories are carried within the soul, and I'm sure there are some of you here who understand this and study it and even teach it and work with it, but they're also carried in our body. Are you aware of this? The memories of pain and sorrow that we've experienced, or fear or trauma, it's not just in the mind or in the memory, it's actually also registered within our own physical body. I'll give you an example. Here's a situation in which I was very, very scared. And maybe it was one individual that caused me to feel that. And I see that other individual and their intentions as whatever they were, but my response was one of fear. And so now when I see that individual, I freeze. I'm not even consciously thinking about it, but literally I freeze. Anyone had that experience? Some of you have, and others might be knowing others who have had this experience. And so what's happened, the mind is not at that moment registering and saying, I need to protect myself against this one. But the memory that's carried within the physical cells of the body carry that. And so now we understand what's going on in the world today. I'm not feeling anything at the moment in a conscious way. There's nothing wrong within my surroundings. But yet there's this fear that's creating this paralysis that's making my throat choke and I'm not breathing very comfortably. It's because there's so much negativity around. It's because the news carries bad news. Long time ago, a person in the media told me, why should we report good news? It doesn't sell. News is bad news. If a dog bites a man, that's not news. If a man bites a dog, that is news. So when it's something extraordinary and when it's bad news, that is news, and that's what sells papers, and that's true even today. To get good news out there, I don't know how many of you here are from the media, you don't have to put up your hands and tell me, but it's a reality. Good news, not so easy to share that, but bad news, it's flashing across the world very fast. And so we are surrounded by negativity that we witness through the media. We hear about it when we share, when we phone somebody. Oh, did you hear about this? What is it that we are sharing? So often it's not good things. And the last thing that we see at night, probably news, or if it's not news, then what is news today? 90%, it's violence and terror and disasters and calamities, and it's all there. But the other thing, the videos. What are the videos we watch? What are the video games, the computer games that are being played? Again, a huge amount of violence. And so all those memories are carried within the consciousness and within the body. And so is it any surprise at all that the whole situation with fear is a huge subject, and maybe in a smaller way, insecurity? And somebody told me that the fastest growing business in London is that of security. Alarm shops where they sell you varieties of alarms and all sorts of things to do with security. Those shops sell a lot. What can I do about all of this? Well, there are a few practical things that I can do. Yes, not put myself in a position of danger. This woman on the beach in Miami, I recommend you don't do things like that. Don't test your faith too much. But also, what am I watching? What am I consuming? When we consume, it's not just the food, physical food that we eat, but it's what our minds consume. What am I exposing myself to? And am I consuming that and keeping those memories in my mind? The experiences of beauty and the scenes of beauty will come and go and disappear. But the scenes of violence and terror, those are going to stick. They're going to stay with me. Why should I expose myself to all of this? I really don't need to. And so to be very careful about what it is I'm consuming physically. And yes, plant-based diet is non-violent, and it's also the safest. Any other type of diet, and you don't know how many antibiotics have been fed into that creature, you don't know how fearful that creature has been, and I'm consuming that fear within myself. So there are practical things that you can do. consumption of food and drink, consumption of material for my mind, the nourishment I give myself. And so let me keep myself safe from all those external things which are actually very easy to monitor and check. And you can then decide what is safe for you, what is going to help you experience security and safety and warmth inside. Let's take a few moments just to spend time for reflection and go on that inner journey, because it's not just the atmosphere that's making you feel warm, but I hope that you'll carry away this method of being able to go inside and feel that security within. And literally everything depends on my own thoughts. Most of you were at Wembley last Sunday, and the whole talk was about what's going on in our mind, and can I be the master of my mind? Can I be the master of my own thoughts? And it starts with a few steps. When a baby starts to crawl, the parent is so happy, so pleased. When the child takes a few tottering steps, again, great joy. And that child may become a marathon runner. But it started with a few crawling steps and a few toddling steps. And so even if I don't know how to control my mind at this moment, that's okay. That's the way everybody is now. But let me begin with a few steps. And these few steps you can use anytime, anywhere, and it'll give you instant relief. It'll give you an instant feeling of warmth and safety. Let's go on that journey. I'll speak out my own thoughts and invite you to follow those ideas. Aware of the physical world and my own physical form, I just take a deep breath and just breathing deeply is the first step to connecting with myself and going on that journey within. Now, I'm not just watching my breath, but I'm doing something else. I'm watching my thoughts. And instead of my thoughts running out there, I decide I want my thoughts to go within. Going deeper and deeper inside my own inner world. I come to that sacred space where only I can enter. This is the space of peace. It is my own inner sanctuary where I'm completely safe. Safe and peaceful. I am that inner being, a being of light, the creator of thought. And in this awareness of I, the soul, I allow my thoughts to slow down, and I can feel the peace that I carry within myself. This is my natural state of being. I am a being of peace, a being of truth, a being of love. I hold this awareness, and these vibrations of peace and truth and love extend out into the atmosphere and touch all souls within it. I come back to the awareness of the physical dimension. But I stay connected with my own world within. Om Shanti. I can imagine some of you have been practicing these ideas and experienced that. But I can also imagine that some found it difficult to keep their mind quiet and still. Well, the reality is that we all start in that way, but it's a training. And I learned to train myself and allow the mind to come back to the center point of my own existence, and then gradually be able to take pauses and allow my mind to slow down. I was in a conference and somebody shared a comment from an African philosopher, and they said that they were talking about how the mind races so fast and creates many problems along the way, stress and strain and everything. And this philosopher said that they have a saying in Africa, and it is, when there's an emergency, when there's a crisis, slow down. Would you do that? When you're told that maybe there's a fire and there'll be ushers showing you the way, are the ushers going to say to you, slow down? Well, maybe they should, because then there won't be any panic, because more people are hurt by panic rather than the actual situation. But more than that, if I allow the mind to slow down, what I'm doing is allowing the possibility for clarity in my thinking. When the mind is fast and it's frenzied, there are too many thoughts moving in too many different directions. Is there clarity at that moment, or is there confusion? Well, you know. And so to learn to slow down the mind and to pace it and to allow it to take a moment to be still means that there's clarity. And this applies not just in an external emergency or relationship emergency or a big crisis, but at all times. Just slow down the mind and you'll find that there's clarity, and therefore the decision that you make at that moment is more likely to support you rather than turn the situation against you. And so just a few moments of practicing regularly makes a huge difference, and you tone up the muscles that you haven't used inside your mind. You know about toning up the body and using the muscles to get health and strength. But what about the mind? Same thing. You have to learn to tone up the muscles and use those muscles that you haven't used for maybe the whole of your life. Not just a long time, but the whole of your life, whether it's 15 years or 50 years, we haven't used those muscles. So, what happens when I'm scared? Can I turn my thinking around so that there's love instead of fear? shared with you the stories. But how does that work? It works when I understand how the mind functions. And it's much, much easier for the mind to go into negative thinking than into positive thinking. Why? Because of the atmosphere, the state of the world, the climate. And also, just think about it. When you're coming down the steps, is it easy? Or is it easier when you're going up the steps? What would you say? Easier down or easier up? Or when a child is going on the ladder and is climbing up the ladder and then is sliding down, how many minutes does it take the child to climb up the ladder and then slide down the ladder? And so it's much easier to just slide down and not even realize that that's what's happening. But if I want to go up, it has to be a very conscious thought. And so I'm faced with a challenge. Maybe the doctor has told me that there's a disease that I have, and it's turning my whole world upside down. But even though the doctor has told me something, now my response to it can be very, very different. And you've seen it within the people you know. Somebody gets absolutely scared and anxious, and the grief begins right from that moment that they heard the doctor say whatever. And on the other side, here's a person, and I know both types of people, and many, many, many in terms of numbers who've gone through these situations. And so here's another person, and they listen to the doctor very calmly. They're very possessed, they're quiet, they're calm, and they come back and they tell the family, and the family is scared for them, but they say, it's going to be fine, it's going to be okay. And guess who's going to be the survivor? Oh, you know already. And these are real stories, not my imagination. But even if at the end of that journey, there isn't physical survival, but the family is left with that feeling of warmth and love instead of fear and anxiety. So whatever the outcome may be, but just simply the reactions that we have, what's going on. And sometimes what's happened is that there's been real situations in which I have been deceived, I have been let down, and maybe in childhood, the memory stays in a very strange way, without any conscious awareness. But stories of infancy and childhood are deeply, deeply imprinted within the soul. And as a result of that, say for example, a child is left with grandparents instead of being with parents. And at that age, the parents, for good reasons in their thinking, it's for the child's protection, whatever. So the child is left with the grandparents, but the child actually feels abandoned. And years later, when the story comes out, the grief that the child has felt and the insecurity that the child has felt is being expressed. And nobody knew that that particular scenario created such insecurity. Another little story of a young man, very angry, and it turns out that parents had, it's again, grandparent story, but parents had left him age 4 with grandparents because they had to go away, and it was just for a short time. But it wasn't just insecurity, but it was anger at abandonment. And so the experiences of the child create the physiology and the psychology of the adult. And so if today I'm feeling scared, unsafe, insecure, there could be 1,000 different reasons why that is so. And I'm not a psychologist, and so I'm not going to take you through all those steps. But there's a spiritual dimension to all of this also. And so it isn't just that physical state of being and the acceptance that, yes, it's going to stay with me till the end of my days and I can't do anything about it. But spirituality is saying that no matter what has happened up until now that I'm aware, and I'm aware of who I truly am, I can change the scenario. So who am I? Am I this, the physical body? Well, reflect just a little further. If I were just this, would I be thinking? Would I be feeling? Would I be remembering? Would I be experiencing? Would I be communicating? All these subtle things that are happening inside the human being are not just the brain, but there's another being within. And so it's that being which is the spiritual being, and it's this spiritual being that I'm calling Atma, soul. The English word atom. And when they chose this word from the Greek, they thought that it was the tiniest form of matter. But in fact it turned out that it wasn't, for the name atom has stayed. But not just a question of the tiniest form of matter, the tiniest entity that exists in the universe is Atma. Where did the Greeks get the word from? Bharat, India. And in fact, people in Greece often talk about themselves as being the Indo-European civilization. And the cradle of civilization for Europe, Greece. So this word Atma, the absolute tiniest, infinitesimal aspect of life, the living being, the source. Can I prove any of this by science? No. But what I can do is look at various situations. For example, can I measure my thoughts? No. But I can measure the impact of my thoughts. That's now possible. Some years ago it wasn't, but it is today. My negative thoughts, I can measure the impact of that. My positive thoughts, I can measure the impact of that. But thoughts themselves, think about New York, think about Bombay. Within a moment, you're there. Think about yesterday, think about a week ago, think about a year ago. The mind will take you there. And so that energy that is generating thoughts is this, the soul. I won't go into more detail of that, but just to say that when I come back to this inner awareness of my spiritual identity as a being of light, and I realize that this being of light that I am is the energy that is generating everything that I am now. And so I can generate thoughts of love, I can generate thoughts of hate. Totally up to me. But the way of the world, and we have a term that we use to describe this period, which we would say is a very dark period that humanity is passing through. We call it the Iron Age, Kali Yuga, the Dark Age. And so particularly within this period of uncertainty and darkness in many, many different ways, during this time what's happened is that we're pushed into creating negative thoughts, including thoughts of fear. And once I become aware of this, I can make a conscious choice. But you have to be fast, because once the train moves, it moves very quickly. One negative thought and 1,000 other negative thoughts will follow very fast. And so sometimes people say, think before you see. Yeah, I know what I'm going to watch, so let me think about it. Do I want to watch this and create those images inside my head and try and sleep with all these battles going on in my mind? Am I going to think before I hear? I know who's going to talk a lot of gossip. Do I want that? Would I rather not? Let me think about it. And definitely, let me think before I speak. For sure. Once the arrow's been let out, it can't come back. And it causes more damage than a knife. But have you heard about think before you think? Now that's where we have to practice. Think before you think. And so here's a thought that comes. Now, hold on, wait. Is it useful for me to pursue this thought? Or is it not? Would it be better for my well-being if I were to say, I don't want this thought. I'd rather have a different thought. The woman in Miami, instead of fear, love. The woman in Brazil, again, instead of fear, a sharing, a giving. And so let me see if I can practice that. Here's an individual and I don't know them, but let me have a positive thought and hold that positivity in my mind. Or I'm in a place where there may be danger, there may be things that are going on that are not very nice, but can I create such a powerful force of truth and love around me that it's able to protect me? And that's possible. You know what animals do? Animals pick up your vibrations. They pick up your feelings. You've noticed it? Dogs, cats, especially because we're closest to them. We don't often meet a lion on the road anymore. But we meet cats and dogs all the time. But yes, they definitely pick up your feelings. They pick up your vibrations. And those vibrations are tangible. And those vibrations reach out. Children pick up vibrations very fast. You don't have to say anything to them. They'll feel your love, or they'll feel your discomfort with them. And they'll try and appease you and try and sort it out before you say anything. But human beings have developed a few barriers as adults. We've created all these different walls so that we are protecting ourselves so that the vibrations of others don't reach us, because we don't know what those vibrations are going to be like. But it also means that if I've created all these walls, my good vibrations aren't going to reach out. And so let me come back here. This is the location of the inner being, the soul. When I come back here inside, then I'm able to transcend all barriers. All the physical barriers, because when I see you and you and you as that shining star shining inside, age, gender, color, race, religion, none of those things matter at all. There's a very different quality of communication of soul to soul. And our vibrations of love and peace and truth can reach out and touch others also. So that is the reality. And so in the awareness of soul, you can come back to that feeling, that awareness of who you are, and start generating those vibrations of love and peace and truth, and just hold yourself in that capsule. And you're protected, but also those vibrations reach out further and others can be touched by them also. It's a reality. I have a few more stories about that, but let's experiment again with silence and going on this journey and creating this protection. I come to the awareness of the inner being, the being that I am, the light that I am. I am a soul, a shining star. And in this awareness, I connect with the treasure store that I carry within. Peace, my natural state of being, love, the pure, innocent being that I truly am, and truth. I started my journey pure and clean, filled with truth. And as I emerge this awareness of my own treasures, the power of peace surrounds me and protects me. The power of love deflects any antagonism that may be directed at me. And the power of truth melts away illusions and falsehood. I'm able to be free, stable, and strong. I am safe. And the peace reaches out to others too, so that they benefit also. And the love and the truth reach out into the atmosphere. I hold this awareness and I come back that I stay in touch with myself. I come back into the moment here and now. Never mind circumstances, situations, atmosphere of the Iron Age, the Age of Darkness. Never mind other people and whatever is going on. If I take a step inside again, I can also see various causes for fear within. It's subtle, but let me just explore again what's going on here. And one of the things that happens is where my conscience and my behavior isn't aligned together. Does that happen sometimes? My conscience is very clearly telling me something, but yet I'm not following it through in my life. And so that creates a very subtle but very strong sense of fear. Because I know that things are not on track, and I know that at some point there'll be repercussions. And on the path of spirituality, what I do when I'm meditating is I make sure that the conscience is being filled with sufficient power to be able to make sure that my thoughts, my words, and my actions stay on track, so that there's an alignment within. Because this non-alignment means that I lose respect for myself, I lose love for myself, I lose value for myself, and there's the possibility of fear. And so I need to get that sorted out. But it's possible. It's very natural and very simple. When I learn to meditate and I draw that power, then the conscience becomes clean, the conscience becomes strong, so that yes, now it's the conscience that rules and not my emotions that rule. Because usually what happens is that something happens to trigger my emotions. And emotions can be positive and negative, but very often it's the negative emotions that get triggered. And so that's what then pulls me away from the compass of my conscience. And so meditation means that the compass becomes powerful, the conscience is strong, and it's able to recognize when the emotions are out of line and bring them back into line once again. And so I need to be aligned within. I need to have a good clean out. There's two words that come in India, and I'll share those two words, and they're actually words that are used in the praise of God. And the two words are Nirvair and Nirbhay. And so Nirvair, without any animosity, and Nirbhay, fearless. And the two words, as I say, they're usually used in praise of God, that He's the one, she's the one who is absolutely without any bad feelings or animosity towards anyone, but also the one who is absolutely fearless. We understand that. But it's also the state for the human soul. When I have good feelings and good wishes for everyone, I'm surrounded by the power of that goodness, and I'll feel very safe and secure. And when I have feelings of animosity towards anyone, negative feelings, then there's a question mark. At what point is there going to be a comeback of that? Because when we talk about karma philosophy, we understand that actions create a reaction, cause and effect. But it applies to the mind also. The thoughts that I have, that creates a boomerang effect too. I send out thoughts of peace, and I'm going to get that return. Maybe not immediately, but sooner or later. Sometimes maybe a year. My experience, a person very, very peaceful, peaceless and angry, and I had to, for a year, just send them thoughts of peace, and not react against their peacelessness and anger. But it finally worked. So it does work. So what am I doing? What are the thoughts I'm sending out? Thoughts of peace, and the reaction is going to come back sooner or later. But thoughts of negativity, animosity, bad feelings, the return? The same. And it's not imagination. Thoughts have an impact, and they create a reaction. And so meditation is the whole process of cleaning. It's not hard work, it's very joyful work, and it's very satisfying work. You know, when you've cleaned something well, and you've given it time and energy, but you feel good about it, right? And if you kept seeing the dirty car, the dirty stain, the dirty whatever, and you didn't put in that time and energy, then every time you pass by, every time you had a look, oh, I've got to do this, and it sort of made you heavy. But you got on with it and you did it, and you say, good, I'm glad that's done. Same thing. What's the state of my mind? Clean, bright, sparkling, shining? Maybe, maybe not. And so meditation means the flow of energy of pure thoughts. So I'm cleaning the mind, my conscience, the connection with the one who is the truth, so that there's power in that. And that's able then to clean the conscience. My deepest habits and aspects of my nature, again, let me be able to clean them out so that the soul returns to its original, beautiful, pure state, which it originally had. So it's not like struggling to get somewhere where you've never been. That's difficult. But if you're simply coming back to something that you know is there, and it's just a clean-up, it's much, much easier. So the journey of meditation is the clean-up of the soul, and back to that sense of warmth and security and safety in which there is absolutely no fear of anything out there, of any human being, or even of yourself. Because our negativity makes us afraid of what we're going to do. And now it's clean, no more fear. So let me see if there are questions or comments that some of you may have, and we can take those up.
Hello. Om Shanti. Wonderful description of how fear occurs. I come here every morning on the bus, and I really cringe at the fact that some people eat a banana, leave the skin on the seat, and they put their feet, dirty feet, on the opposite seat. Is that also fear in myself, or is it the state of things now? I'd like to understand.
The soul, every soul prefers everything to be clean. And so I don't think it's fear that you're feeling at that time, but a reaction against dirt and uncleanliness. And so, yes, let me see if I can pick up the banana peel and put it in the right place in the bin so that nobody else has to experience that. So if there's something I can do about it, let me do it. And otherwise, let me say, okay, let me be peaceful, send out vibrations of peace so that others can also come back to that state of peace instead of a desire to be unclean.
Really nice session. I've been enjoying it. I've been on this journey for the last 6 months or so, sort of listening it gradually day by day. And almost in my mind I've come to a point that I need to meditate. But it is that inertia in my mind to say, I got to take out time, I may not be successful, and so many thoughts. So can you please guide, how do I go ahead on this journey and execute?
If I use the word meditation, maybe it's a little bit heavy. And all the expectations that you spoke about, maybe I can, maybe I can't, all of these things come in. And we use the word meditation because it's a word that most people understand. But in fact, for myself, I just use the word remembrance. And that makes it much, much easier and much lighter. And it takes away any of the official aspects about that. Why? Because my mind is always remembering someone, something all the time. So the natural state of the mind is to be aware, to remember, to generate thoughts. And so in the meditation of Raj Yoga, and I'm using the word again, it's actually a very simple awareness and remembrance of who I am. For example, as I speak now, it's in the awareness and the remembrance that I am that inner being, the soul. And so you don't even have to be silent to remember. You can be talking and be in remembrance. You can be walking and be in remembrance. You can be doing whatever else it is you need to do around the household. Yes, there's work in which your intellect is focused, and then that's different. But there's so much of the time through the day when we're just in remembrance of things that are ordinary. Can I elevate my thoughts and my remembrance so that I'm remembering the soul? I'm remembering the being who is the divine. I'm remembering that connection with my eternal parent. And so make it easy for yourself by taking away all these boxes. And then, yes, it's useful to actually sit down for 5 minutes, and we'll have an experiment with meditation, just a few minutes, but just to sit down so that you're not distracted by movement and people and other things, and then go on that inner journey. And the joy that you will feel of connecting with yourself and then further connecting with the divine will be the incentive and the motivation to continue.
I'm hoping it'll come with evolution. So I don't need to be harsh on myself to say, I've been spending days and I'm not really there. I still think of multiple things, even if I'm thinking and trying not to be distracted.
Don't be harsh on yourself, that's very important, but also be determined. Say, okay, today for 5 minutes, let me try. Is it possible for me just to have 3 minutes, 5 minutes in which I stay focused? Because if I train my mind to do this, it'll be helpful for me, not just for spiritual purposes, but also for anything. You're listening to somebody, and if your mind is scattered, how much can you engage with them in a genuine way? If you're listening, you have to listen properly. Or if you're doing your work, again, you have to focus. So the lack of focus of the mind is impacting our life in many different ways, and ways that are not very good. And so learning to focus again is beneficial on all levels. So don't be harsh, but determined, and say, okay, I'm going to start with 5 minutes, with 10 minutes, and gradually increase it. So let yourself sit comfortably and be still for a few moments. I hold this awareness of the being of peace that I am. My thoughts slow down, and the light within shines. And in this awareness of peace, I connect with the divine. And from the source of love, of light, of truth, I draw those qualities within myself and those qualities radiate out into the world. The power of peace touches not only I, the soul, but extends to the entire human family. And peace reaches out and brings calm. From the source of light, the light of truth reaches out and dispels the darkness. so that we move towards a world of light. Connecting with the source of love. I am surrounded by love, and all fear dissolves. And the power of love reaches not only human souls, but all forms of life, so that they are secure and safe. And the power of love reaches all the elements of nature. And nature, caressed by this love, returns to harmony, so that nature works in cooperation with humanity. Holding this connection with the divine, with the source. I come back to this physical dimension. But now I stay under the canopy of protection created by the divine. And I carry this canopy with me wherever I go, so that the canopy of protection keeps me safe. Om Shanti. Thank you for your attention, and just carry that canopy with you.